pleasant day for everyone. Before I start, let me introduce myself. So, by the way, I am Arimo Aisa, a 4th year BS Mathematics. So, in this video, I'm given a task to discuss these topics. First is the trigonometric equation. Second, proving some trigonometric identities. Third, inverse trigonometric functions. And the last one is finding the values of y for the following: y equals to arcsine x, y equals to arccosine x, and y equals to arctan x. So without further ado, let's get started. So, trigonometric equations. A trigonometric equation is an equation involving one or more trigonometric ratios of unknown angles. It is expressed as ratios of sine, cosine, tangent, cotangent, secant, and cosecant angles. So here's the example of trigonometric equation. This one. Cosine squared x plus 5 sine x equals to 0 is a trigonometric equation. Isa sa pinaka-popular na formula in trigonometry is SOHCAHTOA. The sine, cosine, and tangent are the basic trigonometric ratios in trigonometry used to study the relationship between the angles and the sides of a triangle, especially on a right triangle. So, SOHCAHTOA ay nanggaling sa right triangle, sa hypotenuse, yung ito, the longest side of right triangle, at the opposite side of theta is itong leg ng right triangle. And adjacent kasi next to reference angle. So, but natin kailangan malaman ang ratio na to? Kasi, dapat alam natin na pag so, it means the sine, opposite, hypotenuse, and ka is cosine, adjacent, hypotenuse. TOA means tangent, opposite, and adjacent, yung pagkakasunod. So, need natin matandaan kapag pinaka-need natin talaga na matandaan ng pagsusolve ng trig problem involving right triangle. So, ito naman yung inverse. Itong cosecant theta, secant theta, and cotangent theta. So, ang inverse nila is kunin lang natin yung reciprocal ng bawat ratio at yun na yung inverse ng sine, cos, and tangent. So, ang inverse ng sine is ito. Inverse nila. So, let's have an example para maintindihan. So, find that 6 trig ratio for the given angle theta. So, this is our hypotenuse. So, our hypotenuse is 5, opposite, and adjacent. So, ito yung theta natin. So, kunin natin yung sine theta. Just, alam natin na yung opposite side natin is 3. Just, sulat lang natin. Then, over 5 kasi hypotenuse. Then, itong cosecant theta, so 4 over 5. Tangent theta, 3 over 4. Then, ito naman is the reciprocal of sine theta is 5 over 3. In the cosecant theta is 5 over 4. Tangent, reciprocal is 4 over 3. So, ganun lang. Okay, next. Sa trigonometric identity. So, isa din sa pinaka importante na alam natin o memorize natin itong trigonometric identities kasi itong ginagamit natin to sa pag-prove ng mga trigonometric identities, especially these Pythagorean identities kasi lagi yan nagagamit. Actually, lahat ito nagagamit, so dapat alam natin. So, magbigay tayo ng example. We have example number 1. So, ipiprove natin that this secant x minus tan x times sine x is equal to 1 over secant x. So, we're going to prove this. So, first, we will simplify the left-hand side of our equation, this one, and show na equal siya to the other side. So, we just copy this, our left-hand side. So, what we have here, we'll just convert this secant x into a basic form. So this becomes 1 over cosine x, and tan x is become 2 sine x over cosine x, and just copy this sine x. So it looks like we can combine this two terms, this, because they have the same base, both cosine x. So magiging 1 minus sine x squared, sine squared x, kasi pinag-times natin to, so magiging sine squared x, and then just all over cosine x. And then next, so as long as alam niyo yung Pythagorean identity, so may idea na kayo kung paano ito makuha. So as long as we alam niyo yung Pythagorean identity, so 1 equals to sine squared x plus cosine squared x. So gitranspose na lang natin itong sine squared x to the other side, so magiging 1 minus sine squared x equals to cosine squared x. So substitute natin to 1 minus sine squared x to cosine squared x over cosine x, and then cancel. So matira na lang is cosine x. So that means, cosine x is equal to secant x. So that means that this left hand side natin is equal to 1 over secant x. So that means that 1 secant x equals to this secant x. So that satisfies. So that's the end of our proof. So number 2, i-show natin na yung 1 plus cosine x over sine x is equal to cosecant x plus cotangent x. So proof, so una natin gagawin ay pwede natin i-break this down ito. So magiging 1 sine x, so plus cos x over sine x. And then next to do is convert natin tong sine x to cosecant x. Kasi cosecant x is equals to 1 over sine x. And then plus itong cosine x over sine x is same thing as the cotangent x. So as you can see, so based of that, we just prove this, that this 1 plus cosine x over sine x is equal to cosecant x. Cosecant x plus cotangent x. So that's the end of proof. Proof natin na yung cosine squared y minus sine squared y is equal to 1 minus 2 sine squared y. Proof, so from the basic definitions of sine and cosine and the Pythagorean identity, cosine squared y plus sine squared y equals to 1. And then cosine squared y, transpose natin tong sine squared y to the other side, yung magiging 1 minus sine squared y. So in our equation, we can replace cosine squared y into this. So magiging may 1 minus sine squared y. So ang cosine squared natin naging ganito. Then just copy this sine squared y equals to 1 minus 2 sine squared y. And then so we have, so they are same, so i-plus lang natin 1 minus 2 sine squared y equals to 1 minus 2 sine squared y. So we just have verified the identity. So that's the end of proof. That's why how important Pythagorean identity is. Okay, our last example for our trigonometric identities is to show that cosecant squared x times tan squared x minus 1 is equal to tan squared x. So, what I do is first, transpose natin itong negative 1 to this side. So, magiging cosecant squared x times tan squared x is equals to tan squared x plus 1. So, itong tan squared x plus 1 is a Pythagorean identities. 1 plus tan squared x equals to secant squared x. So, ito magiging secant squared x. And then itong equation natin to this is magiging cosecant squared is equals to 1 over sine squared x, and times tan squared x is equal to sine squared x over cosecant squared x. And then cancel out. So matira na lang is cosine squared x. And as we know, 1 over cosine squared x is the same as secant squared. Cosecant squared x is the same thing as secant squared x. So that means secant squared equals to secant squared x. So that's the end of proof. Let's move on to our next topic, inverse trigonometric functions. Inverse trigonometric functions are simply defined as the inverse or opposite functions of the basic trigonometric functions, which are sine, cosine, tangent, cotangent, secant, and cosecant functions. We know that trigonometric functions are especially applicable to the right angle triangle. These 6 important functions are used to find the angle measured in the right triangle when two sides of the triangle measures are known. They are also termed as Arcos functions, anti-trigonometric functions, or cyclometric functions. These inverse functions in trigonometric are used to get the angle with any of the trigonometric ratio. So, inverse trigonometric functions, we're only going to focus on sine, cosine, and tangent. So, the first inverse sine functions is also is called, another way to rewrite this is y equals to arc sine x, or y equals to sine inverse of x. So, these both are same or equal. Ito parang exponent, pero hindi, it just means the inverse. Okay, the most important thing to know is the range of these functions. So the range of these functions is going to be the closed interval negative pi over 2 to pi over 2, and the domain is closed interval negative 1 to 1. Another really important inverse trigonometric functions is the arc cosine. Okay, y equals to arc cosine x, or y equals to cosine inverse of x, and the range is closed interval 0 to pi, and the domain is closed interval negative 1 to 1. Last one, we're going to look y equals to arctan x, or y equals to tan inverse of x, and the range is closed interval negative pi over 2 to pi over 2, and the domain is closed interval negative infinity to infinity. Sa pag-solve ng inverse trigonometric function, dapat alam natin the unit circle chart. So this is the unit circle. This is the x. So this is the x-axis and y-axis. So dapat alam natin yung x and y-axis coordinate ng bawat fraction, this one, ng mga angle. So, dapat memorize natin yan. Then, let's have an example for the inverse of trigonometric function. Inverse trigonometric function. This one. Ng mga angle. So, dapat memorize natin yan. Then, let's have an example for the inverse of trigonometric function. Inverse trigonometric function. Okay, let's have example number 1 for inverse sine function. So, y equals to sine inverse of 1 over 2. This is also the same thing as sine y equals to 1 over 2. Also, always rewrite it this way. In this problem, we have to find the exact value of the real number y in the closed interval negative pi over 2 to pi over 2, whose sign is 1 over 2. This is the most important part of the problem. It's memorize the range for each inverse trig functions. So we need to find y. We need to find y whose sign is 1 over 2. So sine what angle equals to 1 over 2. So, if ma-figure out natin, we can find out ano yung value na angle of arcsine 1 over 2 is. So as long as we kabisado natin yung unit circle, madali lang siya ma-solve. So, we know that sine pi over 6, which is the same as 30 degrees, is equal to pi over 1 over 2. So pi over 6 is in the range is between negative 90 and 90. That the answer. So this value is positive. So nasa quadrant 1. Quadrant 1. If yung value is negative, example, if to naging negative 1 over 2, it means nasa quadrant 4. Dapat alam natin na ang arcsine functions exist in quadrant 1 and quadrant 4. So, you can confirm this with your calculator if you type this sine over pi over 6 is equal to pi over 2. So, that's for example number 1. Okay. Example number 2 for inverse of arc cosine functions. Y equals to arc cos of negative square root of 3 over 2. And this is also the same thing as cosine y is equals to negative square root of 3 over 2. So this means that the cosine y equals to negative square root of 3 over 2. And y is in 0 to pi. So that's the range of our cosine. So when you think of a negative square root of 3 over 2, always think of positive square root of 3 over 2. We know that cosine pi over 6 is equals to square root of 3 over 2. Ito. So, pero, kailangan natin is negative. Negative yung square root of 3 over 2. So, in this case, cosine will be negative over here. Dito. Because cosine is in the x-coordinate in the unit circle, so the angle that's a multiple of pi over 6 that's in quadrant 2, y has to be pi over 6. So our cos function exists in the quadrant 1 and quadrant 2, and also 150 degrees is in the range of between 0 and 180 degrees. So 150 degrees is the answer. $150 150 degrees is in the range of between 0 and 180 degrees, so 150 degrees is the answer, which same as pi over 6, because pi over 6 equals to negative 3 over 2. So that's for example number 2. Okay, the example number 3 for inverse tangent functions. So tangent inverse of 1, this is also the same thing as tangent y equals to 1. So this occurs when y and x have the same value at an angle. So we have the points pi over square root of 2 over 2 and square root of 2 over 2. So tangent 45 degrees is equals to x over y. So just plug in these 2 points to divide, and our y is square root of 2 over 2. You divide two numbers that are same will equal to 1. So that means that y equals to arctan inverse of 1 is equals to 45 degrees, which the same as pi over 4. Tangent pi over 4 is equals to 1. So pwede nyo lang i-confirm using calculator. So that's for our example number 3, and that's all.